Before we begin, find a comfortable place to relax. Let your body sink into the surface beneath you. Loosen your shoulders and take a slow, deep breath. Let the day's worries drift away. Tonight, we are not rushing. We are taking a slow journey through history, through Europe in a time of war and resilience. Let the story guide your mind, painting pictures of the past, while your body rests and your thoughts settle. And when you are ready, we will begin.
Europe in the 20th century was a land of shadows and scars. The guns of the First World War had fallen silent, but the wounds remained, visible in shattered streets, in families who had lost sons and fathers, in nations struggling to breathe under the weight of humiliation and debt. It was a time when silence carried danger, when fear festered in the hearts of millions, and when the promise of peace was fragile, easily broken. This is the story of how that fragile silence shattered, how nations rose and fell, and how a continent was consumed by a war that would leave no life untouched. The Second World War in Europe began long before the first bomb fell. It began with broken men returning home from the trenches of the First World War, carrying wounds no one could see. It began with promises made in marble halls and consequences felt in empty kitchens. It began with a peace that punished instead of healed. When the guns of the First World War fell silent in 1918, Europe was exhausted. Nearly an entire generation had been consumed by mud, gas, and artillery fire. Empires that had ruled for centuries collapsed almost overnight. The Austro-Hungarian Empire fractured. The Ottoman Empire faded. The German Empire fell, its Kaiser fleeing into exile. But the war's end did not bring justice. It brought resentment. In 1919, representatives of the victorious nations gathered in Versailles to decide the fate of the defeated. Germany was not invited to negotiate. It was summoned to accept terms. The Treaty of Versailles blamed Germany entirely for the war, stripped it of territory, limited its military to a shadow of its former self, and demanded reparations so vast they crippled the economy. To many Germans, the treaty felt less like peace and more like humiliation. In the early 1920s, that humiliation turned into desperation. Germany's economy collapsed under the weight of reparations. Hyperinflation destroyed savings overnight. A lifetime of work could be erased in weeks. Middle-class families sold furniture to buy bread. Pensioners begged in the streets. Children watched their parents lose dignity one coin at a time. Democracy struggled to survive in this chaos. The Weimar Republic, Germany's fragile democratic government, was blamed for everything: defeat, poverty, shame. Extremist ideas flourished. Communists promised revolution. Nationalists promised revenge. Violence spilled into the streets as paramilitary groups clashed openly. Among these groups was a small, radical party led by a man few took seriously at first. Adolf Hitler was not born powerful. He was born ordinary in Austria and drifted through life without direction. He failed as an artist. He lived in shelters. He found purpose only in the First World War, where he served as a soldier and discovered something intoxicating: belonging. Germany's defeat shattered him. In the aftermath, Hitler discovered that he could speak and that people listened. His speeches were not subtle. They were emotional, furious, absolute. He told Germans they had not been beaten on the battlefield, but stabbed in the back by traitors. He blamed Jews, Marxists, politicians, and anyone who did not fit his vision of a pure German nation. He promised rebirth. Throughout the 1920s, Hitler's Nazi party grew slowly, then violently. There was a failed coup, prison time, a book written in bitterness and ambition. Many dismissed him as a loud extremist destined to fade away. They underestimated how desperation amplifies dangerous ideas. Then came the Great Depression. In 1929, the global economy collapsed, and Germany, still fragile, was hit harder than most. Millions were unemployed. Breadlines returned. Democracy seemed incapable of offering solutions. Fear replaced hope. In that fear, Hitler's message found fertile ground. By 1933, Adolf Hitler was appointed Chancellor of Germany, not by force, but legally. Many believed they could control him. They were wrong. Within months, Germany ceased to be a democracy. The Reichstag fire provided an excuse to suspend civil liberties. Political opponents were arrested. Newspapers were silenced. Trade unions were crushed. Germany became a one-party state ruled by fear, propaganda, and loyalty to a single man. Hitler moved quickly to reshape German society. Children were taught obedience, art was censored, books were burned, Jews were excluded from public life, stripped of rights, then dehumanized by law. At the same time, Germany began to rearm. Factories that once made consumer goods now produced weapons. Aircraft filled the skies. Tanks rolled off assembly lines. Young men marched in uniform, chanting slogans about destiny and unity. All of it violated the Treaty of Versailles. Europe noticed, but Europe hesitated. Britain and France, haunted by memories of trench warfare and mass graves, wanted peace at almost any cost. Their leaders believed another war would destroy civilization itself. They hoped Hitler's demands were limited, that satisfying them would preserve stability. So when Germany remilitarized the Rhineland in 1936, no one intervened. When Hitler absorbed Austria in 1938, crowds cheered and Europe remained silent. When he demanded territory from Czechoslovakia, claiming ethnic Germans were oppressed, Britain and France agreed. The Munich Agreement handed him what he wanted. Peace was declared. But peace had been purchased by sacrificing others, and Hitler learned a dangerous lesson. No one would stop him. In March 1939, German forces occupied the rest of Czechoslovakia, proving his promises worthless. Now Europe could no longer pretend. Attention turned to Poland. Poland lay between Germany and the Soviet Union, newly independent and dangerously exposed. Hitler demanded territory. Poland refused. Behind closed doors, Germany and the Soviet Union signed a secret pact. Publicly enemies, privately conspirators, agreeing to divide Eastern Europe between them. War was now inevitable. On September 1st, 1939, as dawn broke over Poland, German aircraft crossed the border. Bombs fell on cities, tanks surged forward. Infantry followed with terrifying speed. This was not the slow, grinding warfare of the past. This was blitzkrieg, lightning war designed to shock, overwhelm, and destroy before resistance could organize. Polish forces fought bravely, but they were outmatched. Weeks later, the Soviet Union invaded from the east. Poland was crushed between two giants. On September 3rd, 1939, Britain and France declared war on Germany. Once again, Europe was at war. Yet for months, little happened. Soldiers waited along borders. Civilians listened to radio broadcasts with dread. This strange calm became known as the phony war. It felt unreal, like the world holding its breath. Then, in the spring of 1940, the storm broke. Germany struck north and west with astonishing speed. Denmark fell in a single day. Norway soon followed, securing vital supply routes. Then came the assault on Western Europe. German forces surged through the Low Countries, Belgium, the Netherlands, Luxembourg, outflanking French defenses that had been designed for a war already obsolete. Armored divisions cut deep into enemy territory, encircling entire armies. France, considered one of Europe's strongest powers, collapsed in just 6 weeks. Paris was abandoned. Refugees flooded the roads. The French government surrendered. Half the country fell under German occupation. The rest became a puppet state. Europe was stunned. Only one major power remained standing against Hitler: Britain. Across the English Channel, the fate of Europe now depended on whether that narrow strip of water could hold back the tide, and the skies above it would decide everything. After Stalingrad, the war in Europe entered a new phase. It was no longer a story of conquest, but of collapse, slow, violent, and inevitable. In the east, the Red Army did not pause to celebrate its victory. It pressed forward, hardened by loss and driven by vengeance. Soviet soldiers had seen what lay behind the German lines: burned villages, mass graves, entire communities erased. Their advance was fueled by fury as much as strategy. The Germans tried to regroup. New defensive lines were drawn. Fresh units were rushed to the front. But something fundamental had changed. The Wehrmacht was no longer advancing into the unknown. It was retreating across land it had already devastated. In the summer of 1943, Germany made one last attempt to regain the initiative in the east. Near the town of Kursk, they assembled the largest concentration of armored forces the world had ever seen. Thousands of tanks faced each other across open fields. The ground trembled before the battle even began. The Soviets were ready. They had built deep defensive belts, minefields, trenches, anti-tank guns layered one behind another. When the German attack came, it was met with overwhelming fire. Tanks burned, crews died inside steel coffins. The fighting was relentless, mechanical, merciless. When it ended, Germany had lost the last of its offensive strength in the east. From then on, the Red Army advanced steadily westward, liberating cities that had suffered under occupation for years. But liberation did not always feel like freedom. The war had brutalized everyone it touched. Revenge, fear, and exhaustion followed the front lines as closely as the soldiers did. Meanwhile, in the West, something immense was taking shape. Across Britain, soldiers gathered in numbers not seen. Since the First World War, camps filled the countryside. American accents joined British ones. Canadians, Free French, Poles, and others trained together. Equipment piled up in ports and fields, tanks, trucks, ammunition, landing craft. This was preparation for an invasion. For years, occupied Europe had waited. Resistance fighters sabotaged rail lines, gathered intelligence, and endured torture in silence. They knew something was coming. They just didn't know when. The decision was made for the summer of 1944. The target was Normandy. On the night of June 5th, paratroopers dropped from the sky into darkness, landing behind enemy lines in scattered groups. Some drowned, some were captured, others rallied and began attacking German positions, sowing confusion. At dawn on June 6, 1944, the sea came alive. Thousands of ships crossed the English Channel. Warships bombarded the coast. Landing craft slammed into beaches under heavy fire. Soldiers waded ashore through bullets and explosions, carrying weapons that felt heavier with every step. The beaches had names: Omaha, Utah, Gold, Juno, Sword. But the experience was the same. Chaos, fear, courage measured in seconds. Many died before reaching land. But they kept coming. By the end of the day, the Allies had secured a foothold in Western Europe. It was fragile. It was costly, but it held. From Normandy, the Allied armies began to push inland. Progress was slow. Hedgerows turned fields into killing zones. German resistance was fierce. Every village had to be taken, sometimes more than once. Paris was liberated in August 1944. Crowds flooded the streets. Flags reappeared from hiding. Years of occupation ended in celebration and grief intertwined. Yet Germany itself still stood. As the Allies advanced from the west and the Soviets from the east, Hitler's world closed in. Cities were bombed relentlessly. Industry collapsed. Fuel vanished. The German people endured air raids, hunger, and fear, many realizing too late the cost of the path they had followed. In desperation, Hitler launched a final counteroffensive in the west in December 1944. German forces struck through the Ardennes forest, catching Allied units off guard. The battle became known as the Battle of the Bulge. It was winter again. Snow fell, supply lines stretched thin. Soldiers froze in foxholes. But this time, Germany lacked the resources to sustain the attack. When the weather cleared, Allied air power crushed the advance. Germany's last gamble failed. By early 1945, the end was visible. The Red Army crossed into Germany from the east. The Allies crossed the Rhine from the west. Cities turned into ruins. Civilians fled in terror. The Nazi leadership retreated into bunkers, clinging to fantasies of reversal. Berlin became the final battlefield. As Soviet forces encircled the city, street fighting consumed what remained of the capital. Children and old men were pressed into service. Buildings collapsed under artillery fire. The city that had once symbolized Nazi power now symbolized its destruction. Deep underground, Adolf Hitler faced reality. On April 30th, 1945, he took his own life. Days later, Berlin fell. On May 7th, 1945, Germany surrendered unconditionally. The war in Europe was over, but peace did not arrive easily. Cities lay in ruins. Millions were displaced. The full horror of the camps was revealed to the world. Emaciated survivors, mass graves, evidence of a crime beyond comprehension. Europe had not just been damaged, it had been scarred. The Second World War in Europe ended not with triumph, but with reckoning. A reckoning with hatred, with silence, with what happens when fear is allowed to rule. And as the continent began to rebuild, one truth lingered above all others. This war was not inevitable. It was chosen, step by step, lie by lie, until it was too late to turn back. The fighting had ended, but Europe was not at peace. Silence settled over the continent in a way that felt unnatural. The guns were quiet, yet the damage spoke everywhere. Cities lay flattened into fields of broken stone. Railways twisted like torn veins. Bridges collapsed into rivers that carried debris instead of commerce. Millions wandered the roads with no clear destination. Former soldiers, liberated prisoners, refugees who no longer knew where home was. Victory did not feel like celebration. It felt like exhaustion. When Allied forces moved deeper into Germany and across occupied Europe, they discovered what words had failed to describe. Camps hidden behind forests and barbed wire. Barracks packed with skeletal survivors. Mass graves hurriedly covered, then uncovered again. The smell of death lingered long after liberation. For many soldiers, this was the moment the war truly became real. The scale of the crime was staggering. Millions of Jews murdered, Roma communities erased, disabled people killed, political prisoners worked to death. Entire populations targeted not for what they had done, but for who they were. The Holocaust was not chaos. It was organized, industrial, deliberate. Europe had to confront what had happened on its soil. Germany itself was divided and occupied. The Nazi state was dismantled piece by piece. Symbols torn down, laws erased. Yet the question remained, how does a society recover after participating in or witnessing such destruction? The Allies faced a difficult decision. Revenge was tempting, but endless punishment would only plant the seeds of another war. Instead, they chose accountability. In the city of Nuremberg, former Nazi leaders were put on trial. For the first time in history, individuals were prosecuted not just for crimes against other nations, but for crimes against humanity itself. The world listened as evidence was presented. Documents, films, testimonies from survivors. Some defendants claimed they were just following orders. The court rejected that defense. The trials did not heal Europe, but they set a precedent. They declared that there were limits, even in war, that could never be crossed without consequence. As borders were redrawn once again, Europe entered a new reality. Germany was split. Eastern Europe fell under Soviet influence. Western Europe aligned with Britain and the United States. The alliance that had defeated Nazi Germany quickly fractured into suspicion and rivalry. A new divide cut across the continent. The Iron Curtain descended. For ordinary people, rebuilding meant starting from nothing. Families cleared rubble by hand. Women worked alongside men to restore streets and factories. Children grew up among ruins, playing where bombs once fell. Food was scarce. Winters were harsh. Trauma lingered in silence, rarely spoken, always present. Yet slowly life returned. Trains ran again. Schools reopened. Music returned to halls that had once echoed with air raid sirens. Europe learned, painfully, how to breathe again. The Second World War in Europe did not end in glory. It ended in lessons, written in blood, stone, and memory. It taught what happens when fear is allowed to dominate reason, when lies are repeated until they feel like truth, when humanity is divided into us and them, and it left behind a responsibility to remember, to question power, to resist hatred before it becomes policy. Because the war did not begin with invasion, it began with silence. And silence, Europe learned too late, can be just as dangerous as violence. The story of the Second World War in Europe is more than a record of battles and borders. It is a story of human choices, of pride and fear, courage and cruelty, obedience and defiance. It is a reminder that even in the darkest hours, people endured, resisted, and rebuilt. Cities may crumble, armies may fall, and governments may rise and fall, but the lessons remain. Hatred left unchecked destroys everything in its path, and silence in the face of injustice can be as deadly as any weapon. Europe survived, scarred but not broken, carrying forward the memory of those who suffered and the responsibility of those who remain, to remember, to question, and to never allow such darkness to rise again.